Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the FanScription podcast. I'm Walter Benasiak here with Rob Walker. Rob, what's going on?
Good day to you, sir.
Good day to you from our respective homes. Of course, we're all adjusting to the current situation, so we're doing this
Here during the plague.
Yes, during the plague, in the middle of the plague, we're giving you the FanScription podcast. So we're doing this from home. We're doing this over a Skype call. Hopefully everything is working out for you guys on this end. But we're still here to talk about the last two FanScription episodes because, like we said, we've been moving to 2 a month now. So we had our first FanScription editorial, which Rob did, on Indiana Jones called Rating Indy's Lost Character Arc. And we did a regular FanScription episode on Frozen 2, which was a sequel to our original Frozen episode, What If Anna Was the Villain in Frozen? And we continued that story on. So first, we're going to get into...
disappointed you didn't call that the Frozone, by the way.
The Frozone? Frozen 2, the Frozone? Actually, that would have been great.
I also would have gone with the Friezening.
The Freezing. Directed by Shyamalan. I think that would have been the best case scenario.
True.
Well, let's get into the Indiana Jones stuff first. So you based this off an article that you read about 5 years ago. It was posted. Where did you first see this, and why did you want to go back and sort of really dig into this aspect of the Indiana Jones character?
I couldn't tell you where I first saw it. I want to say Facebook. Somebody I knew had posted it, or I had seen it on, like, when you boot up your web browser, it'll have some like recommended reading, and I saw it there, and yeah, it was about, the article was 5 years old, and I want to say I read it about 4 years ago, and I just thought it was really cool because I hadn't thought about Indiana Jones's character arc much. I knew that I loved his character. And it always annoyed me when some people are just like, oh, it's just a popcorn movie, and he doesn't really develop his characters and this and that. And I'm like, no, I think Indiana Jones is an interesting character. But when I read it, I suddenly realized, I'm like, yeah, if you put this in a certain order, it actually like shows off a character arc. So when we were looking for some ideas, I remembered that article, and I'm just like, let me try watching it again, because Raiders of the Lost Ark is one of my favorite films. So I did the experiment. I threw on Last Crusade first, and then I switched right when he's about to have the hat put on. Mm-hmm. I switched to Temple.
Right.
So the kid gets the hat put on, and then I hit stop, and then I switched over to the opening of Temple of Doom. And it was almost instantly I noticed this weird thing happen where I'm just like, wow, we just watched this Eagle Scout, this freaking Boy Scout, belongs in a museum, and now he's like this shady ass. He's dressed like James Bond or Rick from Casablanca, and he's doing this shady deal. Like, he's literally going to hand over a priceless artifact for some fucking diamonds. And I'm like, wow, I mean, this was a total jump between this child character to what he is now. And then if you watch the whole movie, it's this progression from, fortune and glory kid to somebody who is willing to give up the treasure at the end of that movie, to the villagers, their rightful owners. And then if you watch, Raiders of the Lost Ark, the government beseeches him. And then he has to kind of hook up with an old fling who he's got some regrets, about seemingly what he did to her, and she's still pissed off at him. And then you go to Last Crusade, where it becomes like this spiritual quest now. And he hooks back up with his father, who the last time you saw would be in this chronology right at the beginning of this whole series, right before he loses the Cross of Coronado. And in the beginning of Last Crusade, he gets the Cross of Coronado back. And at that point, this whole movie is kind of a slightly softer tone than the other ones. And it kind of just almost makes sense. Like, he gets the Cross of Coronado back, and now it's, when he's asked, he's just like, yeah, I'm not here to find the Grail. I'm here to find my father. It's like, oh, don't ask me, Donovan. Go talk to my father. It's like he's being tasked like he was before. And it's like the fortune and glory, the intellectual curiosity of what's in the Ark, all of that doesn't seem to interest him anymore. It's almost like getting the Cross of Coronado back, like, kind of completed him. The only thing left is to, reconnect basically with his father. And then along the way, as I was watching these movies, I'm just like, all of the antagonists are shadow sides of himself. Like as douchey as Indiana Jones is, and he's a total douchebag. Like he's an anti-hero for most of the series. He's only a real hero, I think, in Last Crusade. There's always somebody else to show you that, like, no, this person's worse. And they're all at different stages in Jones's life where they're like, Belloc is also a fellow archaeologist. Elsa is interesting because it's what she's more like what Jones was at the beginning of this series. I think that's partially when you look at his kind of character arc, why he seems so pissed off at her. It's like he's looking in a mirror and he's like, oh, like, I trust you and this and that. And she says at one point, you would have done anything to get the Ark. I did the same. And he's like, I'm sorry you think that. And the funny thing is, in the movie, I believe him. But if he had said that in Temple of Doom, I wouldn't have believed it in a second. Not even in Raiders of the Lost Ark, where he fucking leaves Marion tied to a pole and has a chance to blow the Ark off and make a run for it, and instead it's just like, my favorite scene, by the way, is like the look. If you look in the background of Marion's face, at first she's like all smiling, like, yeah, Indy's got the bazooka. And it's like, go ahead, Jones, blow it back to God. And you can see her smile just go like, So it's the character did evolve as it went on. And you only see this, like you can see it if you watch it out of order, but you only see it really if you watch it in chronological order. That's where it actually becomes obvious. I'm like, this is really interesting. So I had a lot of fun like doing that and picking it apart.
Yeah, it was a really cool thing to dig into and just talk about how, chronologically his character did have more of an arc. Because, yeah, Indiana Jones is kind of seen as sort of the stereotypical old school American sort of guy going to other countries and all that cultural appropriation stuff that people love to bring up. But he, I think, is one of the stronger characters when you look at it this way. Those classic Hollywood characters that, Harrison Ford is, I guess, the highest grossing, actor in history when you combine this with Star Wars and all the other movies he's been in. Where does he... Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, well, he's like the cultural appropriation or the rating of other people's cultures or whatever and all of that doesn't bother me because like the movie makes it, particularly Temple, makes it very clear like that's what he is. He's definitely like, I think the problem is it's like Peter Venkman in Ghostbusters, where the issue is not that Peter Venkman's an asshole. The issue is that the audience somehow got it into their heads, like some segments of the audience out there, that's like, oh, this guy's my hero. And I'm like, he's not. No more than, Rick and Morty is the hero. Like, we like them because they're our unrestrained id. We all want to be able to do whatever the hell we want, but we realize that we live in a society. Like, we can't. So Jones represents like a kind of anti-hero, and he's not an all-American hero in the Superman sense. He's an American hero in the sense that like my favorite type of heroes are often the accidental hero, the hero that they're not really a hero. It's just you're stuck with them. That when you get into a sticky situation, this is the only guy you've got. Sucks to be you that it's this guy, but he knows how to handle this one thing. Ash from the Evil Dead series is my favorite example, like Army of Darkness, where it's just like terrible character. Like he's just an awful character, but when you need somebody to fight the Deadites, it's like, well, you're stuck with him. He's your guy, and he does pull it out at the end. So that's where I think Jones stands, but he does evolve. Like by Last Crusade, I can honestly say, like, no, he's a real hero. Like he's got a moral conscience that he gets back after he gets the Cross of Coronado back.
Sure. Before and after this, what was your favorite Indiana Jones movie individually? Does it change after going through this kind of arc?
No, it's still Raiders.
Gotcha.
I will say this, I have more of an appreciation for Temple. I never is like Doug and I have a huge disagreement about that. He, I think, genuinely dislikes Temple of Doom. Mm-hmm. I do not dislike it. I do find it the weakest of that trilogy, because we're the Crystal Skull somewhere in the Shadow Realm, but I did get a better appreciation for Temple of Doom. I still think it's got a lot of problems. I hate Willie Scott. I appreciate that his choice in women gets better.
Yeah.
as this. Well, sort of better. I guess Elsa's quite literally a Nazi, but I mean,
Right.
it's sad when the
She's
Nazis
not as
are
irritating
filming,
though.
then yeah. So I don't like Willie Scott, and the film's got huge pacing issues. I every time I watch it, I'm really into it at first. I'm like, where does this go wrong? I'm actually really, despite Willie Scott, I'm really enjoying this. Somewhere in the middle, I always fall asleep. Like, and I don't know if it's the claustrophobia of being stuck in that temple versus the other two movies you're really going around the world. But so there is something about it. But I did have a much better appreciation for what Temple does and how it shows Indy as this sort of like douchebag character at first that then begins this like redemption arc. But it's always been the same. I think Raiders is the best film, and then I would go Last Crusade, and then Temple, and then Crystal Skull and the Shadow Realm. And then Young Indiana Jones Chronicles and Fate of Atlantis and all the other like side stuff. Like
The
I
Infernal
can't,
Machine. I remember that game.
yeah, I can't throw them in any sort of like list because like I just got to kind of go with that set of four. Like I feel those are the most canon. But Young Indiana Jones Chronicles was good too. So
Yeah, I did see some people asking about that in the comments about where would the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles fit in. Do you consider that canon?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, we've not established Indiana Jones dying yet. So, like, because Indiana Jones was like, he was like 112 or something. Like,
Yeah.
the guy they got to play him was so old looking. I think it could be now how you would try to watch all that, like, because the problem with it's a show. And I don't think it's really feasible. Like if somebody wants to do a video on that, I'd be very curious. Because I think that would get way too complicated. You would have to do all of the young indie stuff. Then you would have to fit Last Crusade's flashback in there somewhere when he's a young teen. And then you would have to get the teenage indie stuff somewhere in there. And remember, you've got them. A lot of them are bookended by old Indiana Jones telling the story.
Yeah.
I don't know. There was an episode with Harrison Ford in it.
Yeah.
Where
Jim told me about
he
this.
looks like Harrison Ford did maybe about probably Crystal Skull, really. Maybe a little before Crystal Skull. So I don't know. But it's a good show. I think people should check it out. But how you would fit it in, that's for someone else to try, man.
Sure. That's a step too far, I understand. Before we get into Frozen 2, we usually talk about our original, feelings of seeing these movies at first. So if we want to go back to Indiana Jones for just one more second, when did you first see Indiana Jones? Did you see them in the chronological order or the film order at first? How did you experience Indiana Jones at first, Rob?
Kind of backwards. In the 80s saw parts of Temple of Doom on television on like one of those HBO free weekends or something.
Yeah.
When we lived down south at the time, and like occasionally we would get those. That's how I saw Terminator. Scared the shit out of me as a kid. But I saw the last half of like Terminator on one of those HBO free weekends, and my parents had no idea. I was just flipping channels as like a 7-year-old or something. So I saw parts of Temple of Doom then. I saw Raiders late 80s before Last Crusade came out. Because that movie is PG, but it's not. Sure. It would be a PG-13 nowadays. It's almost like Temple, I feel it's almost a very soft R. They scaled back some of the effects, but so my parents didn't really show it to me. I saw it at my cousin's house. Really liked it though. I was pretty young at the time. I'm like, there's some scary moments in that. Mine was always the face melting scenes. Everybody, mine was when Marion's in the Well of Souls there, and you have all those corpses.
Oh yeah,
boa constrictor coming out, and she's like, ah! And like that was me because I was like watching like, ah! Like, and they all have that weird like. Like that weird like hissing voice. So yeah, I saw Raiders on TV then, and then we saw Last Crusade in the cinema. I think it was like 1989.
Yeah, yep.
So I was 10 when I saw it in the cinema, and I love that movie.
Sure.
And I'd say all throughout until I was a late teen, that actually was my favorite. I think it's the most kid-friendly of them. Because, Henry Jones is kind of goofy, and it's,
Yeah. Oh yeah, it definitely is.
but right around late high school, I started to realize I think Raiders was my favorite. The cinematography, like everything about it, the character development, I enjoy that one more.
Mm-hmm. For
And
sure.
then I saw Crystal Skull on the big screen. I was disappointed.
Yeah.
Most God-fearing folk are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I grew up with it too. I mean, seeing it obviously not in theaters or anything. I saw the last movie in theaters, unfortunately, but the first three, just watching them with my family. My dad's a big Indiana Jones fan, and Back to the Future as well. So he introduced me to those films. So me and my brothers would grow up watching those. I always and still like Last Crusade the best. That's my favorite. I just can't get enough of the Henry Jones and Indiana Jones chemistry there. the Sean Connery, Harrison
They're
Ford
great.
stuff.
People who like Last Crusade the best, I have no issue with that. It's a little harder for me, like Brad Jones, like, oh no, Temple's the best. And I'm like, man, I could do better if it weren't for Willie Scott, but that alone, I'm just like, it's a little rough for me.
Right. I do have a lot more appreciation for Temple than I used to. Just going behind the scenes and seeing the making of the monorail chase and all that stuff, or the cart chase, whatever you want to call it. The behind the scenes of that is incredible, and how it looks, and they develop new camera techniques and everything to follow along with the miniature. It looks so good.
That's where I wake up.
Mm-hmm.
It's always somewhere in the middle of the movie. I start dozing off. I'm like, I get strangely bored by it. And when that cart chase happens, I wake up again. And I love the finale. As much as I pick on Kate Capshaw on that movie, I've told Brad this multiple times. There is one line that she delivers so perfectly that I swore to God Spielberg was probably going to drop her off a cliff. Like, basically threatened to do it, and she thought this was real. But when Indy, like, is gonna chop the bridge, and Short Round's like, hold on, Indy, we go for a ride. Like, she does this reaction shot, and she just goes, oh my God. And I'm just like thinking, did Spielberg threaten to really drop her? Like, because it's like the one performance in that film where I think she's pitch perfect. And I'm like, man, I really believe she thought she was just gonna fly off that bridge.
For sure. Yeah, I could see that. He was messing with her a little bit. Yeah, she's one of probably the weakest part of that movie, let's be honest. I agree with you what you're talking about. It feels kind of claustrophobic because Indiana Jones is known for just, world hopping, going all over the place. And he is in a couple different places, and we start off in Shanghai, right, in that movie, and then we go into India and everything.
But once you get into that temple,
you're just in the temple.
Yeah, you're pretty much there. And I think that's part of it, why I kind of doze off a little, where it's like the other movies move at such a pace and kind of jump around with different scenery and stuff. It's like maybe it keeps me a little more interested. I'm not sure, but that's something I just noticed recently while watching. I'm like, maybe that's the issue. I don't know.
Sure. But yeah, I mean, I love Raiders Lost Ark, obviously. I mean, the Nazis are just the perfect Indiana Jones villains, so when you bring them back in Last Crusade, it feels more like a sequel, and I guess it technically is, since Temple is a prequel.
I know it's before the 40s, because a lot of people reminded me that Vichy France did not exist. I'm like...
You want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah, that was just a simple mistake on my part. Like, so when I was doing this, all three of these movies are so close together. Mm. And I think the last one's like 38. Somebody was like complaining that Anschluss technically hadn't happened yet because there were flowers in the background of a certain scene, and Anschluss didn't happen, and later in 38, and if it was spring, and I'm like, okay, I'm not getting into that. I'm like, just cut me some slack on that one. But yeah, the Vichy France one, there's just so many Nazis running around, and then you've got this French guy. And I just, in my own head, completely lost track of where we were in history. And for some reason, I thought the Nazis had already taken over France. And it was one of those, like, just stupid mistakes on my part. And I'm like, damn it. Because, like, I wish, because that's how YouTube always works. It's just like, you want to talk about, like, the importance of character and this and that. And instead of it's like, I don't want to be that guy, Brett. And I'm like, oh.
I know.
So, and it's a legit mistake. I fucked up. It was, but... If you look at the films and the dates are all very close, and there's so many Germans running around and Frenchmen, and they're in Austria, and there's like, it's an easy mistake to make. I slipped up, and that was completely my bad.
Right, and it does not like it affects the entire video. It is just a detail when you're talking about
The issue
Belloq's
was like
motivation.
I want to say it was Roger Ebert in one of his great movies things talked about. I swear, hopefully I'm not Mandela affecting this, but I swear at one point he talked about how Belloq would be a metaphor for some of the French turncoats working with the Nazis. You know, basically a metaphor for the Vichy Francing. And I had remembered that in my head and misconstrued that with he's working for Vichy France. And I'm like, fuck. So
It's
just
all
a
right,
mistake. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Like I said, it doesn't affect the
Well, I
overall
love
video or
history,
what's
so
going
it
on.
bothers me because I'm like, it's a mistake I shouldn't have made.
Sure.
Like, I'm normally more on top of that shit.
Yeah, we all make little tiny mistakes. It's okay. It's okay.
It's the nothing is tiny.
You're right. Well, anyway, we did get some news recently before all this, the world stopped spinning. Basically, is that they kept trying to push forward. Still. Yes, yeah, that's happening too. Another sequel with Keanu Reeves this time. No, about Indiana Jones 5. There's been rumors about that for a long time. They've been announcing it since, 5 years ago, I want to say, more. Ever since Lucasfilm was bought by Disney, they've been saying they're going to make another Indiana Jones movie. They keep pushing it back. The last we heard, Steven Spielberg dropped out, and James Mangold was in talks to direct the new film. I don't even know if this is going to happen anymore, considering the current circumstances that's happening in the world. So, do you think that they could redeem themselves with the fifth one, or do you think they should just stop and leave it be? If they want to do more Indiana Jones stuff, maybe make an animated series or something.
Sure, they can redeem themselves because they already kind of did. Like I for a lot of people, Temple's the weakest. I don't think Temple's a bad movie or anywhere near
weaker than Crystal Skull.
No, not weaker than of the original trilogy. Sorry,
okay,
of that original 3 pre-Crystal Skull, before Crystal Skull came out. Temple was generally considered the weakest. I know there's fans out there that's fine if you like it the best, but generally I think most people are kind of like, yeah, it's the weakest, whether you want to call it a bad movie or not. I don't, but and Last Crusade I think redeemed a lot of that. It was more entertaining. I think it had more broad audience appeal. So they did it once already. Sure you can. My biggest problem, and this is the problem I have with Crystal Skull, I have no desire to see a 70-year-old guy trying to swing around with a whip.
Right. Well, he's going to be he's 77 right now, I think.
Yeah, so I was having trouble with him as Han Solo, even in Force Awakens. And I love Harrison Ford. This is not, but it's the Roger Moore syndrome, the Connery syndrome when they were doing Bond. At some point, it starts looking a little silly. And the way they wrote him in Crystal Skull, I had a slight problem too with the way they wrote him, even in Force Awakens. It's like, I think they're leaning into the fact that he's older and making him almost like your goofy dad, crazy uncle. There's like a couple scenes like in Force Awakens when he's like, I like this thing. Like, I literally thought this is something my dad would say. Like,
I can
tell me I'm wrong.
I could see that actually.
Yeah. And there were a couple scenes in Crystal Skull where my biggest scene, I think it's a problem with David Koepp, who doesn't know how to write for a character like this. I've gone over this before. He's not one of my favorite screenwriters. He's very like paint by number. You get a very paint by number script where it's like it's not really offensive, but it's not really great either. It's just kind of like bland Hollywood product. And there's like a key scene where I always say this: Ford swings, misses, lands in the truck. Now, classic Jones, where you're not trying to be a screenwriter, trying to impress, or the director at least says, no, let's not do this, would just look to the left, look to the right, probably smile or something like, ha, and then punch them in the face or do something. Instead, he like takes the time to deliver this like goofy line where he's like, I thought that was a lot closer. And I'm just like, why? Jones doesn't talk. A lot of Jones's best scenes, he doesn't have a dialogue. He has a look. Like we know that it was because Harrison Ford was sick, with a Traveler's Flu or something, filming in Tunisia or Egypt or whatever. But that scene where he just shoots the swordsman, he didn't sit there and say like, well, take this. Like, he just did it. That's
take this. I would love if they added that in. That's like a Lucas add-on, like a special edition
there's too
thing.
much when people write for Ford nowadays. Like, there's too much. They give him kind of too many lines of dialogue, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, the older he gets, the more those lines of dialogue are coming off as kind of goofy old dad to me. So if they wanted to do another one, I would almost say throw him in the role as the father, which they kind of should have done in Crystal Skull a little more, instead of trying to, well, he's the big action hero. Get somebody, not Shia LaBeouf, get somebody who can be the next Indiana Jones. And that way, if you have Jones there, he can be like a figure who can kind of mentor, throw in some punches and stuff. But like when the whole thing was just kind of set on him, and the only thing Shia LaBeouf could do was like swing like Tarzan, like oh, and Marion's just driving that giant duck through the. I hope if they do it, I hope they like take a hard look. It's like, okay, how are we going to be able to sell this with a 77-year-old guy?
Right. Yeah, I mean, like we said, we're not even sure if this is going to happen now, considering all the stuff that's been going on. So, I mean, productions have been pushed back, worst case scenario, a year or more with some of these films. So, and this was already in trouble before that. So I don't know if it's even going to happen now.
Well, the best example is think of Batman Beyond. Like, and that was animated. Like, you could have done anything with Bruce Wayne, and yet they're just like, no, you've got another character being Batman, and he's the one, and he's still a strong, like, Bruce Wayne is
Absolutely.
still a strong character.
I agree 100%.
So, like,
man.
do it. I would say do it like that.
Sure. I mean, did you see Blade Runner 2049?
Yeah, that actually
similar kind of thing.
2049 had the Indiana Jones I wanted in it. That's the funny thing about it. I'm like, this is actually kind of what I wanted in Crystal Skull. And then you've got someone else kind of like picking up the rest of the story. That movie was amazing, and it played to Ford's strengths. Not a lot of dialogue, very gruff, not really goofy. Like, I think somebody realized, well, he's playing a robot here. I'm like, yes, like, write it like that. That's kind of what Ford does. Like, he is kind of stilted. Like, that's what I think a lot of people like about him. He's got the chiseled jaw, and he's got a personality, but he's not going to win the friendliest person on the planet award ever.
No, definitely not. Do you think that they could make an Indiana Jones series or expand the character or the property somehow without Harrison Ford? Do you want to see that? Because that's a big debate now. It's like, oh, Chris Pratt could do it, or this actor can do it, if they just reboot the character in general.
I think you could. Don't do Chris Pratt. Don't go. Here's my problem. Stop going for obvious. In the same way that Shia LaBeouf was the exact opposite of like, well, that's not obvious. That's just insane. Like, don't go for too obvious where it's like, well, like it's Chris Pratt, and like he can be like Indiana Jones. That would be like after The Mummy going like, we should make Brendan Fraser the next Indiana Jones. Like, well, you're already ripping it off.
Yeah.
Pick somebody out of the box, but that can handle it. I think you could. I'd be interested. Where do you start the story? Like,
I don't. If you redo it, I don't know. I don't know what you would do.
Well, it's like, do you pick? Do you have Ford still in it? And in which case, at 77 now, we're looking at where would be like the early 60s.
Yeah. Well, if you're talking about 5, right? If you're talking about making it with him, then yeah. I mean, they would be in the 60s sometime.
If you don't, I mean, you could go like the Tomb Raider route or the Uncharted games series. I mean, there's plenty of video games that are doing Indiana Jones that are doing it in a modern setting. Mm-hmm. But a part of me wonders, why don't you just take Uncharted or like Tomb Raider and like run with those? Like Tomb Raider, I thought was the best example of something that could be the next Indiana Jones. I'm waiting for one that's like not just good, but like great. So I feel like that could be a replacement if they really do something really great. I haven't seen one yet where I'm like, that was great, that could compete. But I have seen them get more serious. So I'm just kind of like, well, I mean, you could reconfigure this maybe. I don't know.
Right. I mean, just get Alder Ehrenreich, the guy who played him in Solo. Why not? At this point, just have him play the permanent young Harrison Ford. I think they should just go with that. Did you ever see Age of Adeline? The movie with Blake Lively and Harrison Ford.
No.
Okay, so they got this guy to play a young, like early 20s version of him in flashbacks, and this guy, he looks just a skinny Harrison Ford. He looked so much like him, it was scary. So if they wanted to do something like, match, I don't know, like have like they did in Young Indiana Jones, have like Harrison Ford go back and tell an older story, but have a sort of lookalike or something be the main narrative of it, maybe that could work because he wouldn't have to do any of the action stuff. I don't know.
I get why they wanted to go with his son.
Yeah.
And it does actually work with the character arc theory that we had talked about, because I did mention briefly how Crystal Skull does actually sync up pretty well. But they also may have, like if you didn't go with the son, they may have missed an obvious opportunity, which is you could have gone with one of his students.
Yeah.
He's got archaeology students. Eric, can you imagine? Like, I think that would be a more fun plot idea where you've got a student that gets involved in something bigger than himself, and
Right.
Jones gets involved with it as well. Maybe the student doesn't realize it's like, oh yeah, this old man professor has this history.
Right.
And that way you would also have a character that may not be physically as strong as maybe Jones was in his prime, but maybe have the intellect at least to like understand the archaeology, so you don't have to have like lame plot exposition left and right where you feel like you're talking to an idiot. So I don't know. That's one possible way you could do it.
Well, I think that's just about all of our thoughts on Indiana Jones. At least until we get an announcement that they're going to make another, 3 more movies after this or something.
Indiana Jones, oh so tired.
I mean, he's so excited to do it. Harrison Ford really wants to do another one, so it's like I don't want to like rain on his parade or anything. It's just, man, I'm not sure.
Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Nap.
Yeah, that's what they're gonna do. I don't know. We'll have to see. Well, it's all waiting and seeing what they're going to do now with everything that's been changing. So we're on a rolling landscape here with the film industry at this point. Is there any other, because this was our first editorial and everything, so we didn't do a what if on this. This was more just, Rob digging into this character arc and everything. Besides this one, is there anything else that you're really looking forward to digging into? Any other kind of character arcs or editorials that you're looking forward to doing now?
I got a lot of ideas. The next one I'm doing is why Roger Rabbit has the best character exposition in any movie ever. It's a little hyperbole, but I feel like even in the Robert Zemeckis canon, that film doesn't get as much love as it should, because it's some of the best character exposition I've ever seen. And I think that's particularly like something I want to talk about in an era where films are so bloated. And if you look at Roger Rabbit, I watched the movie and I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is an hour 45 running time. And the amount of stuff they crammed into this movie is amazing. And you don't feel at any point overwhelmed or burdened by it, or, oh my God, so much exposition. Like a lot of the monologues that we associate with kind of bad exposition, all of those monologues in the movie really come in the third act, and they're earned, like, because it's a mystery, so you want the character to reveal the mystery. But before that, like, I focus on one scene in particular. It's when Eddie comes back to his apartment, is looking at the pictures from the Catalina trip he did with his brother and Dolores, and then the camera like reverses to the mise-en-scene and shows basically Eddie's whole life story. Through the table is his brother's old desk, and then all of the pictures there. And then you end up seeing Eddie asleep with the bottle of booze empty. So it was a scene transition and character exposition at the same time. And it's the second time, and you would know this, it's the second time Zemeckis did that. Because you remember the opening of the Back to the Future? Same exact thing. Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah, it's the same exact thing.
Right.
And he did this in 2 movies in a row. And in my personal opinion, I know everybody's like, Back to the Future is the world's most perfect movie. I think Roger Rabbit's another contender. I think Zemeckis did 2 perfectly directed films back to back. And I think a lot of it is, all the technical stuff is great, but it's how he treats his characters. And the way he and the screenwriters treated Eddie Valiant was in such a way where you get little pieces of the puzzle with Eddie one at a time in each scene until you get kind of a big reveal at the end of Act 1. There's no big plot dump. There's no giant monologue where he says, well, this is why you get, like Dolores says, a Toon killed his brother. We know nothing else about that. You know, who's his brother? We don't even realize, like watching it again, I realized we don't even know that Eddie is a Toon detective until that scene with the reveal of all of the pictures there. We know he's a private detective, but that he was working specifically for Toons, we don't know that. Like, it's such a part of pop culture, that movie, now, that watching it again, and I'm like, okay, I was pretending I was an audience member who's never seen this movie. I'm like, wow, unless I saw the trailer, you don't know that for sure. And it reveals it at just the right time, as if to answer all your questions so far.
Sure.
So, yeah, that's what I'm going to talk about, basically.
Great. Yes. Right, so that's a little preview of what we got going on next, which will be our very next episode, so stay tuned for that, probably out next week. So our second episode this past month was What If Anna Was the Villain in Frozen 2, which was a sequel to our What If Anna Was the Villain in Frozen, the original one from November. That's one of our highest viewed videos, like, has over 1 million views. It's like, what? Wow. We usually don't get that.
It's almost
that
like Frozen's
show,
a big thing.
I know, almost as if. So I decided just to make a sequel to that and tied into the Frozen 2 that we got in theaters and everything. We did talk a little bit about Frozen 2, I think, on that Frozen podcast, but just to reiterate a little bit, I wasn't a big fan of that movie. I think it had a lot of really cool ideas that they didn't focus on for some reason, because I think they felt that they had to focus on the ensemble of Kristoff and Anna, who was just really kind of irritating in that movie, honestly.
You're forgetting that we needed Olaf.
I know we did need I did
so much Olaf.
I did think he was funny when he was re-explaining the other movies, like in the other situations. I thought that was the best bit. That
occasionally he had these super dark existential moments that actually got a decent laugh out of me. But other than that, though, so much Olaf.
I saw it in a theater filled with families and everything, so kids were cracking up. I mean, we all know why that Olaf is in the movie in the first place. So
Doug brought up the best point in the middle of the film. He turned to me and said, I think we just realized why Olaf didn't show up till halfway into the middle of the last movie. And I'm like, yeah, and being in the whole movie, this is a way different experience, because I didn't hate him in the first film. I really didn't. And I liked the first film. I thought some of the backlash against that movie was getting kind of silly.
I agree with you.
This one, I'm with you. Not so much a fan.
Yeah, I mean, but there were great ideas. Like I said, if they did focus on just the Elsa part of it, I mean, sort of discovering sort of the Avatar route with the different elements and everything. And there's a little, tweaks I think I would have made in there anyway. But I mean, still going that route and make it more mystical and sort of the origin of these different elements and the spirits and everything. That would have been a really cool.
Well, Olaf, or not Olaf. Go down. Yeah, because Kristoff has
nothing.
There's no character.
He has a sitcom plot where
when they did the ring thing the first time, I rolled my eyes and was just like, oh shit. This is all that's going to be in this movie. And I'm like, oh my God. And that's all it was. Every time he showed up, I'm like, oh Christ, more bad comedy coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that song, I do like the song that he did. I mean, the song itself I like, but it's just the pacing of it. Is just the placement of that song is just like, wait, what is this? What's happening?
That's where I thought they completely went for broke, where it's almost like they had this moment like, shit, we're in trouble. Like, well, we'll just do an 80s retro song and maybe that'll distract them. And I'm like, and it had nothing to do with anything. I don't know why was this 80s style retro song with this music video vibe. Like, that's the point where I turned to Doug and I'm like, what are we watching?
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I'm totally on the same page as you in that.
And Anna was neurotic.
Yeah, sure. I would say that the first film is paced so well for the most part. There's a lot of good build-up. There's a lot of good tension built up between Elsa and Anna and, what's going to happen with all that stuff. There's this ticking time bomb of the frozen heart, all that. And it's really well done for a Disney film. It's written really well in terms of, what's happening throughout the story. But like I said, Frozen 2 is just all over the place. You have the Northuldra people, this ethnic group who is isolated inside the Enchanted Forest. And also, I guess, their mother was Northuldra, even though they looked like the whitest people that have ever existed. But they're these Inuit people too. What?
Problematic.
It is a little strange that they kind of retcon that.
Even the production design, I was like, oh, cool, Enchanted Forest. That'll be It's perpetually fall and shrouded in mist. Okay, it's actually pretty boring looking. Got it. No, I think the only point where that movie came alive was there's like one scene where Elsa's like staring across the ocean.
Oh, love that. Yes.
She gets this look on her face like, all right, it's fucking on. I'm doing this. And like starts storming across the water, and then there's like weird unicorn like monster shit and
Right.
like
The water
that
spirit.
one part there was like it was about 5 minutes straight where I'm just like, this is really good. And I thought maybe the movie's gonna turn a leaf now. And then it really doesn't. And then you get weird scenes where the song Anna has is a really great grief song. Like legit, I thought it was probably the best song in the movie. I know everybody goes with the big showstopper.
I loved Into the Unknown. I mean, I do like a lot of the songs.
Yeah, Into the Unknown's fine, but I'm like, this song is really heartfelt and amazing. But then you stop and think for a second, and you're like, she's crying for Olaf. Like it's the fucking snowman. Like it reminds me of like where you've got poor Daniel Radcliffe in one of those last Potter movies, like crying his eyes out over Dobby, and it's like you can't take it that seriously, no matter how hard he's trying, because it's fucking Dobby. That himself, like, and it's like, oh Dobby, I'm just like, I can't do it, but it kills me because it's actually a really good song. And I'm like, man, imagine if they killed Kristoff off. Well,
that's what I did, Rob. That's what I did.
Exactly. Now imagine she sings a song like that. I would have been like, oh my god, this is amazing. But for Olaf, and when you know Olaf is coming back, like if you did that with Kristoff, you know he'll be coming back. But it makes more sense. That was her like husband to be, or I don't know. It's just I don't like Olaf.
I could tell very much. I do want to say, I mean, I don't hate Frozen 2. It's just that I think there's a lot of potential there that they squandered because they felt they had to, placate to all these different characters that they built up in the first movie instead of having a central story. One of the things I like the most about it is the music, and the score is really, really well done in the second one. I think the All Is Found song, the lullaby that their mom sings, that's throughout, and it's like kind of creepy and it's got that folk sort of tone to it. I really like that. So there's still stuff to like about it. I just think that, considering that first movie was such a grand hit that was crossed all these different spectrums to the point where it got annoying for a lot of people with the songs and everything in there, they could have done a better job of just reining themselves in a little bit and using some restraint. But anyway, talking about the rewrites that I did on here, I did like the ideas of the different elements and stuff, so I did incorporate that into my rewrite. And I got to create my own Disney villain, which you voiced, Rob. Braun, the fire troll, off of the Rock Trolls.
You got lucky because it was right as I was getting bronchitis. So
hey,
I was able to get a little raspier. You didn't even give me I'm like, what do you want this to sound like? I don't know, evil. I'm like, okay.
I talked to you. I gave you a little bit of stuff. I said Liam Neeson mixed with like Anthony Hopkins, kind of, and you nailed that middle ground, I think.
In the end, I think I just went for broke. I was like, maybe we'll make it a little more Mark Hamill.
Yeah, I definitely heard a little bit of that in there. A lot of people are saying very Palpatine-ish at some points, and I was like, yeah, I kind of wanted that, though.
Yeah. I actually didn't want to do that, but some of those lines, I'm like, you can't not?
Yeah, I know. Do it.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not blaming the writer, but...
I'm right here. Throw all your criticism at me.
I'm in the same Skype chat.
So, I mean, I thought having a more defined villain that was built up throughout, and kind of, I had Grandpappy sort of build up the mythology, sort of the rock trolls and everything in this one. Which Doug did a pretty good job, I think, of voicing the Grandpappy character again. But they're not even in the second movie really at all. They have one very quick scene where they kind of explain, all right, this is what you gotta do, and that's it. And Grandpappy and the trolls aren't in it at all, where they were a big part of the lore in the first movie. So I thought expanding that and involving them directly into the background of everything.
We're tying this all together. Because my next video is about how to do good character exposition and by default plot exposition. Mm-hmm. And this movie didn't have that.
Right. So I did my best to
existed
try and put that all
those trolls existed only to be like a plot dump at some point. And I'm just like, ugh.
Right. In this first movie, they still were directly tied into the inciting action with Anna and like giving her, erasing her memories with the blonde streak and everything. So, tying them in this one, I think would have been a smarter idea. I think people would have enjoyed seeing them more and sort of digging into the lore from their perspective. But yeah, digging into sort of the different elements. So we have ice, we have Bronn learning the fire powers and also the earth element too, which directly ties into the rock trolls. I don't know why they didn't do that before. It's like they're the earth. I think they should have been the earth spirits. I mean, they literally are rocks. I mean, come on.
That's kind of what I thought when I saw it. I was like, I just assumed they were going to be... Oh, never mind. Okay.
No, we have giant mountain people thing. Never-ending story guy. Such strong hands. That's what we got.
The stupid bat.
Yeah, so tying in the elemental stuff in there, I think would have made for a more enjoyable, cohesive experience. And I do admit, I mean, I definitely went darker with this one, and that's kind of what the Disney Elseworlds label is for.
I love your killing spree ending.
Oh, sure. I mean, I just really killed. Bronn died, yes, of course, but he's the bad guy. Who cares? And then we got Kristoff dying. I mean, like his whole plot, his whole arc from the first rewrite I did is dying for Anna, saving Anna. That's what he always wanted to do, and he achieved that at the end. So his plot arc was fulfilled, I think, without him sticking around. Anna gets to live, and if he has to give his life for that, then it works out for everyone. So, and there's weight to the death in there too. It's not just like, oh, this character we don't know dies. Who cares? It's not like Quicksilver died in Avengers 2. This is actually a character that we cared about a little bit. So, and I do think Anna, our great artist, came up with some really cool designs and stuff, and helped out with.
She did great work as always.
All the time. She always doesn't ever fail to impress. But designing the Bronn the fire troll and everything, and just the expression she has on the face, I was like, oh, this is so cool. This is like a real concept art. I'm really excited by it. So, yeah, definitely let us know what you guys thought of the rewrite in the comments here and back on the video if you haven't checked it out already. But that was a lot of fun to do because I got to make the main thing that I enjoyed was making my own Disney villain, having Rob voice it. So you had our own dark Disney villain. So that was a lot of fun to go back and try. So so as you know, that's about all I have to say about Frozen and everything. I mean, I'm kind of frozened out, honestly. It's been everywhere for these past few months. Any last thoughts on Frozen, Rob, or Frozen 2?
No, I can't, like, I'm just disappointed that Disney leaned so hard into the things that were already annoying people about Frozen. That's I think what I left with was, besides the fact that the story was really messy and cluttered and needed like a good rewrite.
They needed a sole focus of the story, and they didn't have that.
It was just a bunch of stuff that happened, is what it felt like half the time.
Yeah.
Or just unnecessary padding, because the whole Kristoff Anna like engagement thing was just to pad out time. There was no other reason for it.
Right. I mean, they want to give screen time to Anna and Kristen Bell and these very popular characters. I think they felt obligated to do that, but it didn't fit in with what was happening in the story.
Yeah, there was less emphasis on story and more about like appeasing the chart guys who are like, people seem to like this, people seem to like that. They want another big song number. Oh, they want, and it's kind of sad because like I remember when Lion King came out. And
the remake or
no, the remake's garbage.
Yes, we all know.
No, the original one, like, we forget there was a backlash against that movie because of Hakuna Matata. Like that song, when I was in high school, like I knew so many parents, I knew teachers, I knew my friends, I like so many like people just kind of got sick of Lion King because Timon and Pumbaa became such a thing, and. So this happens constantly, and I feel like Disney had a chance to kind of learn from the way that happens, and instead they leaned very hard and just like, let's do it again just to milk that sweet money from all the girls that want to sing, a Let It Go style song, and let's more Olaf, cannot shove enough goddamn Olaf up your like
Rob, I heard you don't like Olaf. Is this true?
Actually, he's all right.
He's fine. Josh Gad's my favorite actor.
Well, okay, that's what bothers me. Josh Gad seems like perfectly reasonable, nice guy.
Sure.
I'm really starting to hate Josh Gad, and I'm like, that's because of these damn roles where I'm like,
His Beauty and the Beast character, LeFou. I didn't even see the remake. I didn't see the live action version of that. So
his LeFou actually wasn't bad. It's not that his LeFou was bad. It's that Disney will only put him in a Josh Gad role, if you know what I'm saying, where it's just like, we just want Josh Gad. Well, what's my character? Josh Gad.
You.
Yeah, like, and I'm getting so sick of it because the guy is talented, and I'm like, I just don't want to only be watching variations of Olaf for the rest of my life whenever he's on screen. So
right, yeah,
and I shouldn't hate the guy because, but like that's what typecasting does to some people. I just start disliking anytime they appear on screen, and it's just like, it's not against him personally, but it's like, oh my god, tell your agent to get something else. It's like my favorite story is Tom Hanks got that role in A League of Their Own, which was wildly different from most other things he had like done to that point. And like, I forget if it was on Inside the Actor Studio, it was James Lipton or somebody was asking, he was like, why did you pick that role? And he's like, well, I remember going to my agent and saying, I'm tired of playing pussies. Give me something different. And he did. It's like, some actors, you need to just go out of the box and do something different. I think Josh Gad's at that point where it's like, please do something different.
I mean, with him though, it feels like that he's so ingrained in the Disney bubble. I mean, he's a brand within himself and represents Disney now. You know what I mean? I mean, it's tough. Yeah, it's gonna be very tough.
Like he's become the John Ratzenberger to Pixar.
Yeah, so it's like, but he's actually doing live action stuff too. I mean, so that's good for him and everything, and that he's getting work and everything.
I hope he he's laughing all the way to the bank. So
yeah, he's got a brand.
I hope he has a wonderful life, but it's just like, I would love to see him do something different because I'm just getting sick and tired of it.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens.
He's not the only one out there in Hollywood. I could probably list a dozen people where I'm like, please do something different. But we're talking about him right now, so.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah, so that's just about all we got to say about Frozen 2, and Indiana Jones. You heard earlier, Rob is going to be doing an editorial on Who Framed Roger Rabbit, the classic. That will be out.
Spoiler alert: Judge Doom framed.
Oh, yeah, that'll be out next Tuesday. So keep an eye out for that. After that, right after that, the week after, I'm going to be going back into Disney Elseworlds and doing Aladdin. I got a pretty cool idea for that, so I hope you guys come back around for that one. I'm working on writing it right now. And we're planning right now on either having a podcast or a new episode of the show out through May, so you guys will be able to check back here every week and see some kind of FanScription content here on the Channel Awesome YouTube channel. If you're listening to this just on the audio, make sure you subscribe to our iTunes feed or wherever you're listening to this on. And we'll be back here with more FanScription very soon. Rob, any last words here?
Less Olaf, please.
Excellent. Okay. We'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Later.